Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. This is plant 3 in the final look of the 2022 Project Orchids, and I'm taking advantage of a gap in bands of heavy rain going across. So it's quite early Wednesday morning. I'm not in the video to introduce it like I normally am because I need to go and get ready because I'm going out. I'm going to be brave today. My back is sort of okay. I'm not going to say it's better, but it's okay. And as a consequence, I need to get out. Basically got some shopping to do and some other bits and pieces, and I'm going to make an attempt to get the stuff out of the boot of the car. But the heavy sound system, the large speaker cabinet, I'm going to see how I go with that. I might just leave it in the car. And you know, it can stay in there for a long time if necessary until I'm very confident that I can lift it out. Let's put it that way. All the other bits and pieces in the car are not heavy, so I should be okay with those. So I need to get some fuel for Sunday for our trip to Burnham. So I've got some things to do today, and I've got a gap. I've got about a 3-hour gap to get all my stuff done, do the dustbins and everything else where I've been confined to barracks. So I need to get cracking today. So as I said, I'm filming early prior to being ready, basically, because I can do it. As long as I'm not in it, I can do this bit of filming. So let's get going with plant number 3. Okay, and plant number 3, the last one in this group, Laelia purpurata variety striata. A large Laelia. I've got this one potted in bark in a holy clay pot. This one suffered from the root issues with the cattleyas, where I tried to treat them for scale and got it totally wrong and destroyed a lot of my root systems. So many of my cattleyas are in a state of recovery. This one didn't fare too bad as far as the roots were concerned, but nonetheless it was still a problem. And what happened with this was it lost a lead, so it ended up not blooming. So this was the lead that it grew, this large one here, but no sheath, therefore no blooms. It started this growth back at the beginning of the winter, and it got to about there and stalled completely. And I didn't believe it was going to grow. Well, it has decided to grow. It is pushing on now. Whether it gets up to full size or not, I don't know. We've got signs of root growth at the base of that particular growth. Then a second plant, this is in 2 pieces, is this piece here, which is basically smaller and has less strength in it because it's got a pseudo bulb with no leaf here that is an odd shape as well. So this one is also an odd shape, but it has a good leaf. And then this one, not too bad. And then what was the new growth at that time, pushed on, very, very thin at the base, not very strong, but did produce a leaf. Now, in theory, this should produce a new growth. And with the new growth, like on the other one, we should get some new roots when it gets to about half size, because this piece hasn't got very good roots. But it has got some branching roots down here. There is root activity just starting on this plant, only just, literally in the last week or so. So what I want from this one is for this growth to mature to a proper size. Whether I'll get that or not, I don't know. And then on this growth, this other plant, it is a separate piece, I'd like a new growth to push out and again get up to a reasonable size. Both of those new growths, should they both exist, one does, the other one doesn't yet, but hopefully will do, I don't expect to bloom. These need to be a good, strong, reasonable sized plant with a good backup of pseudo bulbs and decent sized leaves to actually bloom. And in addition to that, these are high light orchids. These do like quite a lot of light. They also would prefer not to get too hot. A lot of the Laelias come into that category. They'll put up and tolerate with the heat, but often it will slow their growth because they transpire too fast in the heat, so they lose their hydration, and if it's not replaced then they semi-stall, shall we say. So to keep these going they need reasonable humidity, good light and constant hydration during growth. Yeah? And try not to get them too hot. So that's my hopes for this one. It will recover, unlike some of the Cattleyas which were actually lost. This one should recover, but it could be a couple of years before it recovers enough to actually bloom again. Because although it looks collectively like a reasonably substantial plant, it is two pieces. So it's only two half plants, yeah? You see what I mean? So it's not a substantially strong plant. It needs to get, each piece now needs to get back to something like this whole. So a couple of new growths possibly on both before we see some blooms. So that's that one. Okay, and the last one in this group is my big Strappy Laelia. And I wasn't expecting a huge amount from this. All I was hoping in this particular case is that it would start to grow, and in which case would generate some new roots, because the old roots are not good. That's a long story. So what we have in this pot are two plants. One starts here and heads off over there, and the other one starts here and heads towards us. That's the weak one. And guess what? The weak one's got the new growth. So this little piece here is going to produce a new growth, which hopefully will get some roots going on it, because effectively it's a piece with 3 bulbs and 2 leaves, so there's not much of a piece there. So expecting blooms off of this particular piece would be just wishful thinking. That's not going to happen. Now on the other piece we've got quite a few more bulbs and quite a few more leaves, but what we have is a new growth that's spindly. And these black marks I'm not happy with, but they've been there a long time and they're not getting any worse. They're not spreading, it's just there, whatever it is. And this growth here was the new one, and it's smaller. Yeah? So somewhere here should be a new growth soon, but it's not happening yet. So there's a little bit of root activity on the existing roots, not much, but then a lot of them are down in the pot, so we wouldn't see. So hopefully on this particular plant we would get a new growth, and then hopefully on the other little plant here the new growth will push on and create a reasonable size bulb. I doubt if it'll be full size, but with it should come some roots. So it's hanging in there. I won't say it's progressing at a phenomenal rate, because it's not, but it's got the longer days now. And this one in particular doesn't need heat. I won't say it's a cooler grower than a lot of Cattleya types, but it can be found in cooler places. So it should still do okay, even though it hasn't got the heat that it had around the old grow room. So we'll see how that one pushes on as the season progresses. And the last one in group 1 is my large Strappy Lalia purpurata. And again, I've actually done what I said I was going to do. This has actually been repotted relatively recently. And the reason was there were new growths, and certainly with Cattleyas you're often going to lose a lot of your old root system. This one didn't have much of a root system to lose, so I had nothing to lose in getting it in some new media. The old media was old and tired. So what we've got, 2 plants in here. There's still 2 plants in here. We've got the little plant over here. It's got 2 leaved pseudo bulbs. I strapped those because one of them was hanging out sideways. I'm getting fed up with it knocking things as I move the plant. Nice strong new growth coming up on there. That will produce a new root system for that little plant because it's got next to none. So that's that one. And then round here is the bigger plant. This has actually got 5 pseudo bulbs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all with leaves on. So obviously this is the strong version, and this is the one that's most likely to bloom next because it's just a large sort of portion of the plant. The other one's really to grow on, and this one has its new growth starting, and it did actually have some signs of root activity on some of the old roots as well. So down in the pot there could be some roots growing, but we will get new roots from the new growth. If this is going to bloom, I doubt, but because of the disturbance, but if it's going to bloom, then basically this growth needs to mature and produce a sheath. The sheath on these are large, you know, they almost look like a second leaf. They are large, and they go dry, and then the plant sits there and does nothing for an amount of time. Once it's matured the bulb, done the root thing, produced its sheath, if it's going to produce blooms, it must have a sheath. Yeah, so if you get a mature bulb on this without a sheath, it's probably not going to bloom. I don't know of any of these that push buds straight out. They need the sheath. And then they rest. They stop growing, basically. They stop doing everything. And then after their rest, the spike comes. So you've got to allow for that rest. And while they're not growing during that period, don't drown them or you mess your roots up. So hopes for this are the possibility of the larger portion of the plant to bloom, but we'll wait and see. It's okay, it's got 5 bulbs and 5 leaves, but it hasn't got a root system to back them up. So the root system is more important on these two plants. Right, that's that. The last one in this group is my Tatty Lalia purpurata. And I say tatty because the thing, Cattleya leaves last a long time before they drop. So if you get a problem with your leaves, you're stuck with them. And, you know, okay, this leaf is starting to yellow and will drop. It's on a very old pseudo bulb. It's not the end of the world. But it's had some bite from some scale, which leaves the very pale yellow patches. So as it turns yellow to drop off, which is what it will do next, it really does look in a mess. But we got 2 plants in here, and all I could hope for was to get new growths on both pieces and some new roots. Well, this piece over here is behaving itself quite nicely. It's got 3 bulbs and a new growth. So in fact this was the weaker of the 2, but it is pushing up a nice strong new growth. More importantly, roots, and some of those roots have come out of the previous growth as well as under the new growth. So some roots, that was the important thing. Excuse me. The other plant round here, it pushed up a new growth that looked like it was going to fail. It turned yellow, and then out of the top came a green shoot, which has grown on. It's weak, it's not a strong shoot, but then, you know, at least it's got one. It has a new green leaf, and down in there it has some roots as well. So both of these pieces are going to grow on, and that's all I can hope for. This is probably a long way off blooming now. I mean, I've got the light in here, that won't ever be a problem, not in this place. But these growths are well behind what would be the normal schedule. They should have been growing up to full size during this growing season. And then they should rest a bit in the winter and bloom later. That's not going to happen, I doubt, very much. But if we can get 2 growths to mature with some roots, then the next 2 growths should get up to full size. That's the theory. But a lot of it will depend on how many leaves drop on the old bulbs. As I said, there's 2 old bulbs here that have got very tatty leaves on. This one and this one. And they were damaged by scale some time ago, which is what all the pale patches are. And then obviously they're now being discarded. And yeah, we'll go from there. But I mean, it's certainly not my best looking plant by any means. But my other Laelia purpurata I lost, so at least I get to keep this one. So we will see. That's all I can do. It's just it's growing some new growths. It's got some new roots. So all we can do now is let it do its Cattleya type thing. and mature the growth as best it can, which probably won't be full size, get a reasonable root system and patiently wait for the next new growth. And hopefully that one will be bigger and better on both plants. Remember, this is 2 plants in here. So it makes it look like quite a large mature plant, but it isn't. It's 2 quite small plants. And the older parts of the plant were quite desiccated due to the root loss. So that's that one then. So at the end of the season, you have to sort of, this is one of those classic examples for me where I have to stop and think, is it really worth carrying on with the plant? The older part of the plant is totally desiccated. The leaves are fading in some cases. They've been marked by scale. I mean, look, these leaves, they've got no life in them. Now, part of the goal, 2 little plants in here, was to get a new growth on both of them and some new roots. Well, the larger part of the plant has actually succeeded in pushing up a reasonable new growth, and it's actually produced some roots. So you could say that part of the plant might be worth saving, but you have to look back down the plant. That leaf, yeah, that's the latest other growth. That's the second newest growth. It's desiccated. It's totally gone. Same with the one behind it. And then there's 3 other pseudobulbs behind that. So it's actually got 5 pseudobulbs, and all of them are badly desiccated. There's no strength left in this plant. And the other plant is much smaller, the other one that's in here. And the new growth on that really wasn't very successful at all. So you have to sort of stop and think sometimes, is it really worth carrying on with this? Unless I get full-size plump bulbs with a sheath, I'm never going to get blooms. This new growth may not even reach its full potential. You know, the growing season's over now, and it's far from, you know, mature, and it might stall. You know, I mean, it hasn't even got a proper leaf yet. So, you know, this plant is waiting on the next growth. Now it has some roots to get some sort of strength into it, and nothing's ever going to happen with the older part of the plant. It's shriveled and desiccated, and the leaves will drop eventually, you know, leaving it with no way to feed itself and no strength. And the other smaller part of the plant is even farther off ever being any good. You know, you've got a leafless bulb, 2 leaves, not very good, and a funny little growth that it did. Now, okay, it is starting to grow some new roots, so it has potential, but how long would I be waiting for this, either part of those plants, to ever bloom again? I would say a minimum of 2 years to get enough strength in it to even think about blooming, and maybe 3. And it's a big strappy plant that takes up an awful lot of the shelf. So there's a decision to be made here. I'm not going to make it now, but this plant, you know, may be destined for the bin, basically. It just it's too far gone, and it's going to take far too long to get back to anything resembling a decent Laelia or Cattleya type, whatever you want, you know. It's enormous as well, you know, it takes up an awful lot of space. So I wouldn't say that was a successful season for it, although, you know, part of the goal for this plant was achieved. It has pushed up a new growth and created some roots in places. So it's sort of moving forward. I've achieved that much with it, but I have to stop and think about the long-term future of the plant. Is it worth bothering with? And I'll leave it on a cliffhanger. So that was plant number 3. We can't be successful at everything. I've always said that all along. You don't just get the successes, you get the things that are not so good as well, and you also get the failures. That's life with orchids. So that was plant number 3. I will be cracking on with the rest of these plants, final looks. We've still got 6 to go. Although, I'll give you a spoiler alert, not all of them made it till the end. And this one only just did, and I'm still not sure whether I'm going to keep it. Anyway, plant number 3, thanks for dropping by, and thanks for watching the project, Orchids. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.